Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Gardner, certified financial planner, author, and founder of FinLitTech. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for season 3 of the Emoney podcast that makes sense. Today's topic, the culture of money. We are going to be joined today by 3 very special guests, and we're going to be looking at how our respective cultures influence and impact our financial planning process and our overall financial wellness. Our first guest today is none other than Chloe Moore, certified financial planner and founder of Financial Staples. Our second guest is Rosa, certified financial planner and founder of Build a Better Financial Future. And our third guest is John Eing, who is a certified financial planner and a CPA. And he is a relationship manager with Abacus Wealth. Chloe, Luis, John, thank you all for joining us again and really delving into a subject that I think a lot of folks are interested to hear more about, is the various backgrounds that we all have and the clients that we serve, and how these cultural differences and the diversity and inclusion aspect of what is getting a lot of attention nowadays, how it helps us when we're dealing with our clients. So Chloe, if you could take a few seconds, tell everyone out there a little bit about yourself and your passion.
Sure. My name is Chloe Moore. I'm the founder of Financial Staples, which is a virtual fee-only financial planning firm. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and I serve clients nationwide. I primarily work with young tech employees who have equity compensation. And so I've been in the industry for about 17 years. As far as my passion, I would say financial education and literacy, particularly among marginalized groups. I'm super passionate about that. And I love exposing financial planning to Black and Brown communities, not only with my clients, but also helping people get into the industry.
And Chloe has been recognized recently on the, can you tell us a little about, come on, mention it, Chloe, that's important.
Well, yeah, I feel like I'm on a little world tour right now, but yeah, I was on the cover of Financial Advisor magazine. It's one of the 10 advisors to watch. And also Luis and I were on the, we're featured as the top 100 advisors for Investopedia as well.
Thank you so much. Luis, talk about a setup, talk about a transition. Look at that. Tell us a little bit about your story, Luis.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Rosa. I am the founder of Build a Better Financial Future, which is a fee-only financial planning firm, working mostly remotely out of Pasadena, California. And I am passionate about bridging the wealth gap, particularly in the Black and Brown communities. I work with individuals that sometimes are the first of many in their households, the first to graduate college, the first ones buying a home, the first ones to even have a job with a 401k. So it's a whole new world that they didn't learn in school, didn't learn at home necessarily. So I'm just trying to do my part to help bridge that gap. And like Chloe said as well, to help other Black and Brown advisors get into the industry so that we can service more and more people.
Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit about the other organization that you all are part of a little later down. So I want to keep that one in the bag for a little later. John, please tell us a little bit about your background.
Yes, well, first off, thank you so much for having me on this episode, Mac. It's such a privilege to share the stage with yourself and Chloe and Luis. So very honored to be here. A little bit about myself. I'm a partner and relationship manager at Abacus Wealth Partners out in Calabasas, California. I'm also a member of the firm's investment and M&A teams. I'm also a career shifter. So I'm a CPA by training, as you mentioned, and I saw the light and found financial planning about 7 years ago. In terms of my passions, I feel like it's really a privilege what we get to do. And my favorite thing in terms of what I feel like I get to do as a financial planner is really learn deeply about my clients' lives and their stories, and see how that informs their financial planning decisions, and really kind of taking the two, like financial planning and their stories, and helping them create really good, solid, smart financial strategies. When I'm not helping clients, I love speaking at universities, and as I saw the light, sharing with others and other students of financial planning, what a great career and opportunity a career in financial planning is.
That's wonderful. Thank you all so much. All right, so we want to start off the conversation. We all have personal, professional experiences that sort of shape how we do what we do. Chloe, maybe share some stories that you've experienced, maybe personal anecdotes that really influence your approach when it comes to culture and financial planning.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When I started my career, I worked, I'd say, for the first 10 to 15 years or so with primarily, just a very homogenous group of clients. It was mostly, older clients. I'd say a large majority of those clients were white, heterosexual. And so now I work with a wide range of clients. I have, mostly people of color, a lot of women of color, a lot of breadwinners, interracial couples, LGBTQ couples. And so it's been really, really fun kind of digging into all of my clients' different stories and backgrounds. And so one thing I find in common with a lot of my clients is that they are the first person in their family to graduate from college or just kind of experience this big shift in socioeconomic status. And so it's very fun kind of helping them kind of unpack their history with their money and understand some of the decisions that they've made or that they've seen their parents make and how that affects, how they manage their money today. And then it's also, kind of fun helping them realize like the opportunities that are ahead of them and some of the things that they can do to kind of change their situation.
Great. Luis, you made a few statements earlier talking about, the fact that some of the people that you're working with may be the first folks to be in this financial situation. Share some of the stories, some of the experiences you see.
Yeah, growing up, one of the things I noticed, Mac, was that from a generational standpoint, a lot of us and my peers were kind of starting from scratch each time. And what I mean by that was I noticed a lot of people never really transfer any wealth or even life insurance proceeds. Like that was just not a thing. The best case scenario that I saw growing up was when somebody died and left enough money to pay for their own funeral. And that was considered a success. This was before the GoFundMe days, so we had like those people just going around asking for help when somebody died. I mean, it was so common. So nobody I ever knew inherited a property, got life insurance proceeds, nothing, right? So a lot of my clients now are going through the same things that I went through, and they're the first in their family. So I'm trying to help change that because, you don't need to leave your kids millions, but if you can give them the gift of maybe graduating college with no debt, I mean, that's quite the head start, right? So I just noticed kind of like how every generation just started from scratch. Parents didn't leave anything, and then you started all over again, and so on and so forth. And I just want to help break that cycle. Wonderful
points. John, tell us a little bit about some of your stories. You've got some great stories, man. You're a wonderful storyteller. Tell us what's worked for you.
Yeah. So, it's interesting when I thought about, when you first asked me to be on this episode and I thought about the intersection of money and culture and just looking at my personal background as an Asian American, there's lessons that we see and learn and experience growing up, right? But you never really understood. And then you talk to your other Asian American friends and they have different stories. And one of the things I realized, as I was kind of embarking on this journey is that Asian Americans are not a monolith, right? So in an effort to better understand kind of how Asian American culture influences our decisions around money, I recently started a Asian American Knowledge Circle through the FPA. And we learned a couple of things. So despite what the movie Crazy Rich Asians may have shown, Asian Americans are actually very secretive about their wealth and money, and it's not something they like to freely talk about, right? Including with financial professionals. They also tend to love real estate, and one of the interesting reasons I heard as to why real estate might be a favorite asset class for Asian Americans or Asians is that unlike in the U.S., you're not able to own land in a communist country. Yet what you grow on the land, the government can't take away from you. So there's this kind of concept of, land providing security and nourishment for your family in a way that's secure from, someone, like the government coming and taking taking that away from you. So for me, this kind of intersection of money and culture is fascinating, and it's one that's still evolving for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think the historical impacts, the government impacts, I think the history of, especially for folks who come from backgrounds. My dad is from Antigua, my mom is from Haiti. In the Haitian culture, real estate is everything. You know, they must own real estate and they must pass it down. And so sometimes it's hard. You're saying, no, you have to look at some of the other factors when it comes to investing. And no, they want their real estate, right, and it's being passed down. And so it's very interesting to hear those various cultural things that just non-negotiables, right, as they say. Those are very fascinating to hear. Now, talking about all this diversity and inclusion, now, how do you think, how can we integrate more diversity into the planning process? Chloe, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just understanding that there's so many different types of diversity. You know, a lot of people just think about race and gender, but in addition to that, you know, there is the sexual orientation, gender identity, there's disabilities. And so each category, you know, is not a monolith, like John said. You know, just even thinking about, you know, just within Black Americans, there's some people that, like me, I'm a direct descendant of slaves. There are people that come from different countries, like, you know, your parents came from different countries, and so there's so many of us, you know, that some people immigrated here, you know, as an adult, some people, you know, were born here first generation. So, you know, just there's so many different stories and kind of experiences even within the same culture. And so I think, you know, just the big thing about how we can use that to integrate into the planning process is making sure that we lead with empathy. If we take the time as financial planners to understand our clients' backgrounds, their histories, their personal stories, their values, and what's important to them, I think we can do a really good job of helping them achieve their financial goals.
Luis, you and I have had many conversations about this aspect. What are your thoughts on how we can get more diversity in the planning process, understanding that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're dealing with a human being, right? And I think if you're willing to just ask open-ended questions. Sometimes as advisors, we are immediately in advisor mode. And as a client is speaking, we're already thinking about strategies to help them. And it's like, no, forget that for now. Just truly open your ears and listen. Because there are lots of ways that you can communicate with people. Listening is a huge one. You don't have to be the one doing the speaking. And since you're dealing with a human being, you have to lead with empathy, because your relationship with money may be completely different to the person sitting in front of you. So you want to find out, you know, ask open-ended questions like, what is your first memory of money? So that you can try to help uncover that money story and then help your client. And, you know, I love one of the things that you said, Mac, about non-negotiables, dealing with cultural differences. You know, like in my culture, in the Latino, Hispanic culture, it's very common for people to be sending money back home or helping a younger sibling with their school. And that is something that no matter what, they're just not going to not do, right? So even if it meant not putting money in the 401k, right? So you have to understand that the textbook is not always going to apply to certain situations. And you have to come across in a way when you're not being judgmental, and you just help the client navigate their current situation and their goals and eventually get them to where they need to be.
I love what you said at the beginning. When I would coach advisors, I would ask them, I said, hey, how many ears do you have? Like, 2. How many mouths do you have? Like, 1. Try listening twice as much as you talk in that initial discovery meeting. Just give it a try. And they're like, oh, ooh, that's a good idea, man. Yes, listen, ask open-ended questions. I love that. John, what about you, man? Tell me some of your experiences and diversity within the planning process, within your process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Chloe and Luis just said. You know, looking at the client as a human being and showing empathy, listening to them and learning their story and meeting them where they're at. And like two of the ways I really think as a profession we could better incorporate culture into the planning process is it has to do with empathy and listening. It's to learn and to share. And what I mean by that is, I remember when I was in business school, we did our like final capstone kind of project. That's basically a consulting project. the project I was on was for one of the oldest real estate companies in Japan. And I remember before we went there, we did the usual like due diligence, looking at their financials and all the usual stuff, right? But the other thing we did was they actually taught us about Japanese business culture. So things like don't sit before the most senior person at the table does, knowing where to sit, and kind of different like cultural nuances that we would have never known. Right. So for me, the first thing is to learn, right? If you're looking to serve a particular community, if you're looking to serve a particular type of group, like we just did something at Abacus on for Pride Month, where our LGBTQ advisors had a session where they really taught us about different kind of issues facing that community, right? So the first is learning. The second one, I think, is sharing. And I know we all, as people of color, advisors of color, we take on a lot, right? So I'm not trying to add one more thing to our plate, but I think it's also important to share our culture, our experiences with others, because what you don't know, you don't know, right? And it's hard to kind of account for that. I think it was like 1 or 2 Christmases ago, Disney came out with this very neat short film, right? And it was based on the holidays, and it was a story about a grandma and a granddaughter. It was based on Christmas, and the theme was about Filipino culture. And I remember one of our traders who's Filipino shared that with our firm, and the comments were amazing. So there's this one scene in there, if you check it out. There's a metal tin, right? The grandma has with her sewing kit in it, right? And when people saw that, it was amazing because everyone, regardless of race, ethnicity, culture, upbringing, was like, my grandma also had this tin, right? With the sewing kit in it. And it's something we can all relate to. And as Chloe and Luis were saying, it's so important that if we listen, as many differences as we all have, we also have a lot of similarities, and that could serve as a bridge to kind of bring us together.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that could really kind of help us incorporate that into our planning process better.
Now, for all the listeners out there, when I told you that John Eing is a storyteller, I was not messing around. The brother can tell a good story. So I love that, because I think one of the things that we balance in this business is, there's certain musts, right? Assets, liabilities, income, expenses, right? And the cover of my first book, I say your emotions should be colorful, but your finances should be black and white, right? And we have to balance that. And I think that's not always an easy thing to do, but having and understanding the cultural differences of folks that we're engaging has to some way be weaved into the overall financial plan. So I definitely appreciate that perspective. Let's look a little bit more now at diversity and inclusion within the industry. All right. Now, Chloe, Luis, I told you I was going to tee something up for you all to discuss what you're working on. But can you talk a little bit about what the industry can do to get more folks of varying backgrounds into this space so that they can be the channels of education when it comes to personal finance? Chloe, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A lot of times, people say there's like a pipeline problem, and we just can't find, these diverse people. But it's really not a pipeline problem. It's a networking problem. And I think if a lot of advisors would just expand outside of their network and expand their network to people who aren't like them, and really make that effort, there's a ton of people out there, just from all different types of diverse backgrounds that have so much potential, and that can really add to our industry and make it much better. And so the first thing is just, being open to different backgrounds and experiences. So one of the things that we did, Luis and I and 2 other co-founders, we started an internship program called the BLX internship program. And so it's a way to bring aspiring Black and Latinx financial planners into the industry. And so we kind of matched up these aspiring Black and Latinx students and career changers and people who just wanted to get into the industry with financial planning firms. And so right now we're in the middle of the summer, our first summer cohort. And so that's going really well. But just even within that process, just learning how firms hire and what they're looking for, just if they could be open to having different backgrounds and experiences and understand, someone who's a career changer that has, a totally different type of experience has a lot to bring to the table, versus someone who just, went to financial planning, got a financial planning degree and came up kind of the traditional way. So there's so many different experiences that people can bring to the table to make a financial planning firm better.
I love that. Luis, what are your thoughts as one of the co-founders of this organization?
Yeah, I think firms and advisors need to take a look inside because it starts from within. Even like your website content, when somebody goes on your website, what kind of photos of quote unquote clients show up, right? Does an outside client looking in say, yeah, I want to work with these people? Does an advisor of a different background look at it and say, I feel like I may belong in this group, right? So you want to create that. They say that you cannot be what you cannot see, right? So you want to make sure that you're portraying a welcoming environment. One of the reasons we created the BLX internship program is because we discussed some of the barriers to entry. So Chloe and I had a similar background where like she had to wait tables when she was going to college, right? I couldn't afford to have an internship because unless it was paid, I was just not applying for one because I needed to work to give money right back into the household. Because my parents told me, I'm going to put food on the table and give you an education, a roof over your head. Like anything else that you want, you got to go out and get, right? So we decided to create the program, which includes a minimum $15 per hour for 15 hours a week, 8 weeks in the summer. So we removed that barrier. The other barrier was that we noticed a lot of people from diverse backgrounds only got into the industry through some sort of sales environment, like pushing life insurance products or something like that. But they didn't really get true access to actual comprehensive financial planning. And then they weren't delivering that either to their peers because they were just told, hey, here's the list of 100 names, call everybody and see what you can sell in this policy, right? So being open to having people be part of your meetings, have them sit in, like I have my intern now, he gets into my client meetings via Zoom, takes notes, I introduce him, learn the actual process. Don't just use him for administrative tasks and things like that. Like really give him a shot at being part of the overall planning process from start to finish. And that's one way, because once you get these people in the industry, then they will start servicing those clients that will eventually be profitable for your firm anyway. So it's a win-win.
I so agree. The need in our industry for more advisors, period, no matter what they look like or sound like, is huge. And so if we can get more attention, more young people, or Chloe, I love your point of career changers, folks that said, hey, you know what? I can actually help people in this line of work. I think that'd be great. John, what about you? How do you think the industry can do different things to get more diversity going?
Yeah, it's simple. I think we need more Chloes and more Luises. And the program, the BLX internship program, I think is a fantastic start. Right? We're Abacus is a beneficiary of those interns, and we're going through, I think, our second rotation of interns right now, and it's been a fantastic and eye-opening experience for all of us. I think one thing I would encourage firm owners, right? I think the statistic out there is something like, there's 14,000 RAs. Most of those RAs are independent, and most of them are owned by white male over 50 years old, right? So the demographics, even though in the country is changing rapidly, it may take a while for that to change within the industry. And so it made me think of the story of a pastor in Washington, D.C. named Daryl Davis. I don't know if you had heard of Daryl Davis before, but if you Google him, you'll get a bunch of searches that come up. And what he is known for is single-handedly converting about 200 KKK members and white supremacists from their previous beliefs into a new belief of acceptance. And if you watch him and you wonder how he did it, he believes in two things. And it's something we touched on earlier. He believes in making human connections and friendships. And so there's a story of him, going to think about this for a second. A Black man who's a pastor going to a Klan meeting and reaching out, right, in the sea of people who traditionally don't like him or shouldn't like him, and building trust, building respect, and helping them see a different paradigm for living. And he has this great saying. He says, "We live in space age times with Stone Age minds, and our ideologies need to catch up to our technologies."
Mhm.
And I thought that was so apropos for our discussion here today, in the sense that, we have amazing financial technology that's getting even better, right? Like
Yeah.
Emoney is amazing and just getting better. And to the extent that we could help our technologies, or ideologies rather, match up to our technologies, then we could do so much more, not just in making our planning processes inclusive, but making our industry more inclusive by inviting more people of color in, as we're going through this transition phase, right? Treating everyone like friends. I mean, what do we do at Friends? We listen to each other, we build trust, we have mutual respect for each other, we spend time with each other, and most importantly, we have fun with each other, right? So, to the extent that we want to make the industry more inclusive, it's having programs like the BLX internship, where we're inviting people in a safe way into the industry, and we know how to include them. Really, I would say, in the spirit of Daryl Davis, you treat people like your friends, like you would want to treat your friends.
As I hear everyone talk, it's the things that I've been in the business for 20 plus years, and you hear all these stories, and you hear all these, and these Mac nuggets, as I like to create. But the one that resonates, and it ties in with everything everyone is saying. I was at a conference, and the speaker said, "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." And I think that's one of the things that goes through literally your color, money. People care what you sound like, people care what you look like, people care where you're from. Money doesn't, right? But if we can just sit down and just listen to folks and just say, "Hey, look, don't worry about what it is that I know. I want to know more about you. I want to care more about your situation." They stop looking at you from a demographic. They just look at you as Chloe, or they look at you as Luis, or they look at you as John, who's trying to help me on my financial journey. I don't know if you knew this or not, but you're actually segueing us to our next topic, which is technology. And how do we feel technology can play a part in kind of creating more financial wellness and creating more awareness through diversity and inclusion? Chloe, what are your thoughts on how technology can help us out?
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I think technology can be both a blessing and a curse. When you think about from a blessing perspective, consumers have information at their fingertips. They have such easy access to tools. We as advisors have access to tools to help our clients. But then also, just from the bad perspective, people of color often fall prey to scams. They have easy access to credit or things that get them in financial trouble. There's a gamification of investing through all of these different apps, and so I think just as financial advisors, and especially with all of us being certified financial planners, the more we can do to get good quality tools and products and information out there, and then help our clients kind of sort through those things and figure out how to apply all of these tools and to their benefit, I think we can really make a big difference.
Do you actually see, Chloe, do you encounter clients are coming to you saying, "Hey, what do you think of this?" Or, "I'm seeing this." Like how extensive is the double-edged sword? Because I've heard that quite a bit from advisors, that folks are now they went to Dr. Google to find out what was wrong with them health-wise, and they're going to advisor Google to find out. Do you see that in your practice?
Oh, I see it all the time, and especially when it comes to investing. I won't throw any names out there, but there's a couple of different apps and companies that And literally almost every client that I work with has some account at these companies, and they've lost money. And so, yeah, or they've heard certain things from certain websites. Again, I'm not going to throw names out there, but they go to certain places to find information, and so it can really be a bad thing.
Yeah, I totally understand. Luis, what are your thoughts on how technology can help us out here as advisors in financial wellness for our clients?
I think it could be a great tool because, John, thank you so much for sharing those stats. 14,000 RIAs. A lot of the times those RIAs are not physically located in areas where people that need the advice are, right? And with the pandemic, a lot of advisors saw themselves scrambling to see how they can serve their clients, but they realized that a lot of people do like meeting over Zoom, or they can reach a wider range of people. So now, if advisors are more open to continuing that, even as things open back up post-pandemic, so that you can work with clients throughout the country, the same goes for interns. Part of the BLX internship program, we have a lot of interns that are not close to the RIAs. So now they can do a virtual internship and still join client meetings over Zoom and do other technologies that they can do messaging with the advisor when they're not necessarily meeting face-to-face. So there's a lot of ways that we can use technology, without a doubt, to both help clients and also broaden the diversity within the industry itself.
That's great. John, what do you think? What's your take on technology and how it can help us and get more things going for our clients?
Yeah, I think technology is critical. Both Chloe and Luis mentioned, how technology can be detrimental to some folks, and it could be enabling for others, right? Where we can meet virtually, and now we have access to financial planning in a way that we didn't have before. And I think, now more so than any other time in human history, technology can really shape and influence human behavior in a way it never could before, right? And as this advent of technology is coming into play with AI and machine learning and all of this, I think diversity becomes that much more important, and different perspectives become that much more important in the development of these technologies. A story of a gentleman named Anthony Mays comes to mind. He's famous for kind of going from Compton to Google is his thing. And he shared a story where, one of the first projects he worked on was Google Photos. And Google Photos, I think many of us use it today, but when it first started, it wasn't very successful. And they couldn't figure out why. And, a person of color joins the Google Photos team. And they realized something very quickly that the previous engineers couldn't figure out. And what they realized was the app didn't work on people of darker skin tones. Well, were all the engineers previous to him racist? No, probably not. They were just of lighter skin tone. And, it's always this thing of, history has these stories of like things that you don't know can hurt you, right? And in this case, it really hurt the app. Luckily for them, Anthony Mays came around and said, hey, yeah, this doesn't work. And I know how to fix it. And lo and behold, now we all benefit from it. So, kind of from that perspective, I think it's so important as we're developing these technologies that different perspectives, right, different culture, ethnicities, our diverse perspectives are included so that the technology can be used for good in a way to expand financial planning to more communities, especially communities that weren't able to access it before.
Yeah, I love that perspective. I love the fact that you can get a group of folks in there that have been doing something one way for a long, long time, and until you have almost force other perspectives and other things in there, you got to keep getting the same result over and over again. So I totally appreciate that perspective. And it leads us into our last point that we're going to talk about is actually the need for more financial planning, the need for more of this technology, the need for more service in underserved communities. So, you know, Chloe, if you can start us off for this last round of questioning, but, you know, why is providing underserved, marginalized groups, why is that so important when it comes to, you know, diversity and wellness right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that there's a growing wealth gap, and there's a growing, you know, just in general, and there's a growing racial wealth gap, and just the financial services industry has traditionally catered to, you know, those who have, the people who have the money, the tools, the resources, and those people are very homogenous, and it's, you know, mostly older white clients, and so as we, you know, as the population becomes more diverse, like we have to make sure that we're including more people into wealth building and really providing that financial literacy and education, so that marginalized groups can gain that economic power and hopefully, you know, change the world for better.
For sure. Luis, what are your thoughts on that? I know it's a big question, but, you know, just want to hear just the overall thoughts on how that could work out.
Yeah, economic power resonates with me because it's a generational thing. And I think if you empower people to have enough money where they could achieve their goals, enough time to enjoy it all, and then also pass it down for generations to come, you're gonna uplift people, right? You know, they say that a rising tide lifts all boats, but you gotta have a boat first. So let's try and get people those boats and get them in the water so that they too can prosper. Right. And, you know, when you look at it as an advisor in a firm, it's also profitable because we talk about this $1 trillion wealth transfer that's going to happen at some point. But if you're not taking care of even though your clients' kids who are young that don't fit your ideal client, they're not going to stay with you when they inherit that money. Right. So you want to start working with people, create a different fee structure that's not necessarily based on assets under management. Maybe charge a planning fee, right? What a concept. And work with these people. And that's where it comes. You can hire younger and more diverse advisors to handle that for you, even if you personally cannot handle the quote unquote smaller clients, right? So that when they do start making money, having their own assets and getting that wealth transfer, your firm is already in position to receive it because you've had the relationship all along.
Yeah, and I think technology can really help do that. And we're seeing a lot of, to John's point, a lot of new things that are coming about, that are being developed to get these resources to markets and to areas that have been underserved or overlooked for a long periods of time. John, I know you've got some good thoughts and perspectives here, and I believe we may even have some visual aids for this part. But what's your thought process here with regard to underserved and marginalized groups?
Yeah, I'm with Chloe and Luis. Get the man a boat, right? You know, to me, and I don't say this to sound dramatic, but to me, it's a matter of life and death, right? Studies have shown that lower levels of income can contribute to poorer healthcare outcomes, lower education, and shorter life expectancies. Yeah. So we all want people to be healthier, well-educated, and live longer, right? We want them to have a boat. And I came across this like amazing study from Morningstar. Are you familiar with baby bonds? So the concept is real simple, right? When someone's born, they get $2,000. The government gives them $2,000, and then they get $1,000 per year after that. And the study that I saw said currently the wealth gap between Black and white populations is like there's like a 96% wealth gap. And with this baby bond program, that gap would shrink to 56%. Just with this program. And I was like, wow, that's mind-blowing. And then I read further into it. And then it said the money that they're receiving was assumed to have been invested in treasury bonds. Now, can you imagine, right? Like if that was just invested in the S&P 500, which stood 15% annualized in the last 10 years, I mean, that wealth gap would be like gone, right?
Yeah, it'd shrink like that.
Instantly. Well, not instantly, over time. But the point is, in order for someone to even know that they should have put that money in the S&P 500 because it's going to be invested for 18 years, all of that, they need to know what the stock market is. They need the basic financial planning, kind of guidance and experience that as financial planners we all know, but that needs to get shared with these underserved communities. If you grew up in an environment where you don't know about the S&P 500 and you don't know about the stock market and you don't trust the system, you're not likely to take advantage of that. So while this program could be very powerful, it may not have the full effect that it can. So, kind of for me, like when I looked at that, it was astounding, and it really kind of honed back in for me, like the importance of some of the work that you're doing, Mac, in terms of sharing financial literacy and education. That $1 invested in 1926 in U.S. Treasuries would have grown to $22 by 2020. That same $1 in the S&P 500 would have grown to 11,000, right? Just kind of for perspective. And then just one other kind of piece of study I came across as it relates to kind of a more personal side for me, and as being an Asian American, I found the study that said, it showed home ownership in LA County for people 50 and older, right? The typical first-time home buyers are like in their mid-30s. So by 50, you would think, most of this group would have homes. And, one of the statistics out there says the average home ownership in the country is about 62%. Asian Americans, in general, own 62% as well. But when you unpack that, right, I mentioned how Asian Americans are not a monolith. When you unpack that and you kind of drill down into the groups, it's really 5 Asian American groups that have home ownership rates above that average. The other 45 do not.
Wow.
Right? So when we talk about providing financial education and serving the underserved communities, it's so important that we infuse culture in there, right? Otherwise, we're looking at all of our cultural, like Mac, you shared that, you have Caribbean culture within your heritage. We're all not a monolith. Right. And to effectively serve those underserved communities and marginalized communities, I think culture becomes that much more important in the way we're able to deliver and share financial education.
I think that's so true. The words that I believe will come from this gathering, this meeting of minds, is we're not all monoliths, no matter what it is, Black, Asian, white, Hispanic. We're not monoliths. We need to ask more questions.
Yeah.
We need to care about the person that's across the table from us. We're not here to sell. We're here to learn. We're here to understand. We're here to guide. And I think all that is are solid takeaways from our time together, and why diversity and inclusion is so important. So we're trying something new this season. We're calling it Speed Round. So I'm going to have a question. I'm going to ask you all this question first. I'm going to go to Chloe, then Luis, then John, in that order. And then you hit me with your answer. And then we're going to go to question 2 and question 3. You ready? There we go.
Let's do it.
Chloe, what's one thing you wish you knew about money sooner?
I wish I knew the role that income plays in building wealth. There's several studies that show for both women and people of color that we can earn up to $1 million less during our careers. And so, just the idea of, once you can only cut back your expenses so much, at some point you have to increase your income if you really want to grow and build. And so, just helping people understand the power of negotiating, talking about money with colleagues, really, really working hard to further yourself in your career or in your business. I think that makes a big difference.
Luis, what about you? What's the one thing you wish you knew about money sooner?
I wish I knew it was a tool and not an end result. A lot of times we get so focused on just like accumulating money because, especially like in my culture, it was always like a scarcity thing where you either had it or you didn't. In Dominican Republic, there's really not a middle class. You either rich or you're poor. And the relationship with money then becomes one where when you do have it and you came from a background that you didn't, you have that struggle with the balance of, do I want to enjoy it now versus keeping it for later? So the mentality tends to be something like spending money now just because you never had it before, right? then you make more money as you get older, but then you still find a way to spend more and still be in the same situation, even though you just drive a nicer car and have a bigger house, right? And still living paycheck to paycheck.
Totally understand. We see that. Sadly, we see that too often in our business. John, what about you? What's the one thing you wish you knew about money sooner?
Yes, I wish I knew about the power of compounding. And what I mean by that is, really understanding the difference between gambling and investing, not looking at the stock market as somewhere I could make a quick buck, but something that I could use to build generational wealth, right? Gambling is entertainment, investing is wealth building. And I wish I would have known that much sooner.
Amen. Amen to that. All right. Question 2. Chloe, you're up. What's one hope you have for the financial services / fintech industry?
My one hope is that we continue to build reputable resources to better serve the masses. Like I said before, I think a lot of the financial services industry caters to, those who are wealthy or those who already have. But the more that we can continue to put out, good quality information to people who really need it, I think that we can really help the marginalized communities.
Sure. Luis, what's one hope you have for the financial services / fintech industry?
My hope is that it becomes a profession in the same way that we look at doctors and lawyers with a very straightforward path to get into it. If you want to be a lawyer or doctor, you have to go to pre-law or medical school, right? The exams you got to take. There's so many different ways, but there's really not a path to get into this industry. And also, it's not really a profession just yet, right? Because a lot of it is product-based and transactional based. I want financial planning to become the leading reason why you establish a relationship with a client in the first place. And if they happen to have money to invest as part of the overall plan, perfect. But not being the leading, hey, we don't talk to you unless you have X, right? Because then that leaves way too many people out of the advice that they need.
Yes, so true. So true. John, what's the one hope you have for the financial services / fintech industry?
Yeah, I hope that we can incorporate diverse perspectives and inclusive practices into technology to democratize financial planning for everyone. I really think technology is the tool that can level the playing field, where we could make, advice that was traditionally only for the 1%ers accessible to everybody else.
So true, so true. All right, last question. Here we go. Chloe, you're up. Fill in the blank. Financial wellness is?
Financial wellness is powerful. It can really be a game changer when you shift your mindset, when you learn new things, and you actually just apply those things to your situation and build wealth. I see transformations in my clients every day, and it's just really rewarding to know that some of the work that we do together is changing the trajectory of their future and potentially their family's future.
So true. Luis, fill in the blank. Financial wellness is?
Having enough money to achieve all your goals and enough time to enjoy it all.
Ooh, I like it. Clean, concise. I may have to borrow that one, Luis. That's good. That's good. John, fill in the blank. Financial wellness is?
Attainable. You can do it. It's not as overwhelming as people make it seem. It's totally doable, especially with the help of a good financial planner.
So true, so true. Chloe, Luis, John, we would like to thank you all for sharing your insights, your thoughts, your essence with us today. We all know that this financial life journey is a long one. It's a complex one. There's so many things that we have to deal with, and there's so many things we have to work with. And in our roles, we serve so many different roles. So thank you all again for the time, and for all of you out there. As we know, the journey continues.